How you doing? It is I, the Terrorific Lady, otherwise known as Brandy, and welcome to the first ever video of this kind on Retro Horror School, the Terrorific ranking of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Nightmare on Elm Street franchise got its start in 1984 with the very first of the films, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and ended with the Nightmare on Elm Street remake in 2010. The film's central linking point is the lovely man of our dreams known as Freddy Krueger, who vows to get revenge on the parents of Elm Street who burned him alive by killing their children in their dreams. Robert Englund's portrayal as Freddy and Wes Craven's initial vision makes these films, this franchise, everlasting, and that will stand the test of horror time. Freddy is known as one of the big three if we are talking about 80s horror, next to Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers. So I have watched or rewatched, because some of the movies are first-time watches for me, and others I haven't seen them in a while, and still others I've seen them a lot of times, but hey, I'm going to see them again. So I watched all 9 films in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and I'm going to rank them all from what I think is subjectively the worst to what I think is subjectively the best. But I'm going to try and be both subjective and objective at the same time, if I can. So I will do my best. I will talk about things in my rankings like what I thought about the storyline, the acting, the scares, special effects, and the overall impact of the movies. Of the movie in particular that I'm talking about. But before I get started, I want to let you know that I have a Ko-fi to where you can purchase $1 tiers and $5 tiers. If you want to know more about what is included in those tiers and you want to show your support, go to the link above to learn more. So let's just dive right into the very first Retro Horror School franchise ranking of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. The child murderer Freddy Krueger returns in this one to haunt yet another group of teenagers and to kill them in their dreams, which is pretty much the common thread of any Nightmare on Elm Street film. Freddy Krueger, haunting dreams, killing teenagers. Except for several of the movies, which I will talk about later on in this video. It starts off as a continuation of Dream Warriors, and it kills off all of the survivors of Dream Warriors. Kristen accidentally pulls the character of Alice into her dream, transfers her dream powers to Alice, so I guess powers can be dream transferred for reasons that I cannot explain, because the movie doesn't even really explain it. And then Alice also, for reasons not explained, anytime that her friends die, she absorbs their personalities and their talents for some reason, and she uses those talents to face off against Freddy Krueger and defeat him once and for all until the next movie. Well, acting-wise, I wasn't really truly invested in this movie. They had to recast Patricia Arquette's character that she played in Nightmare on Elm Street 3 with Tuesday Night, and when you compare the two, like me personally, I just felt that the acting did not compare. The other characters, were fine. Like, I have no real complaints about any of them. They're the typical, horror movie characters, the nerd, the athlete, just the stereotypes of typical horror movie characters. I really had no complaints about them. Like, they were fine. And, they're always looking for some excuse to bring Freddy back. And this is the most ridiculous way that he was brought back. He was brought back. The initial trigger was a dog pissing, and then his body starts reforming. So I guess if you want to bring Freddy Krueger back, you do it through dog piss. There were so awesome special effects, particularly by the amazing Screaming Man George. The one effect of his that grossed me out is when Debbie was turning into a cockroach. And Freddy kills her in the Roach Motel. Blech. And this movie had kills galore. Kill, 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 kill. Which definitely will satisfy you if you are just a fan of slashers and kills and body count. This movie has the most, I believe, Nightmare on Elm Street kills since Dream Warriors. However, the story doesn't explain much, and it feels just a tad disjointed and honestly a little boring. I found it really hard to keep my attention focused on this movie, which is why Dream Master is in my number 9 spot. So we got Freddy Krueger. Now, again, he has killed every child in Springwood. And so he is now on to another town to, I guess, more fresh meat, more teenagers to kill. And he ends up in this small town where his long-lost daughter, so Freddy Krueger has a daughter, his long-lost daughter Maggie is working as a therapist for troubled teens. And so he is trying to, live through her, come out, through her, recruit her to be like, hey, you can carry on my work. And she's like, nope. Nuh-uh, no, I'm not. And they have a final showdown, and she defeats him once and for all. Until the next movie, when the cliche, in horror movies, is the villain never truly dies. So you have Maggie, who doesn't remember Freddy Krueger as her father, and then just along the way, as events happen, she ends up remembering that Freddy Krueger is her father. And that's an interesting premise. I know I would freak out if Freddy Krueger was my father. I'd be like, oh my lord. So to me, this would have been a good idea. You have the dark tone with Freddy Krueger being this woman's father, but then the goofy route that they went with Freddy's mannerisms and some of the special effects kind of clashed tonally with the darker tone of what the main plot point is. My favorite Freddy is when he is dark and goofy, kind of like he was in Dream Warriors. That is my favorite Freddy. But here, they went a little bit too far to the right and made him very, very goofy. I'm not a fan of goofy Freddy. I like a balance. And I don't know what was up with some of those special effects. Very dated, again, just 90s special effects. Those dream demons, I don't know. Oh, those dream demons, it made me laugh, and I don't think that was the intention. Then it had the goofy special effect of that one guy in that video game. But probably the coolest special effect and the one that made me feel really bad was Carlos. Poor Carlos. Poor Carlos and his eardrums, and Freddy exploding his head with all that sound. What an asshole. Freddy, you're an asshole. So tonally, I thought it was a very disjointed idea. A very disjointed film with a very compelling idea. If they just focused on the idea of Freddy Krueger having a daughter and trying to recruit her into taking on his legacy or trying to enter the world through her, I think it would have been a much better film. It didn't bore me in spite of it being disjointed, which is why it is one spot higher than Dream Master. So the plot is meta horror, a very self-aware horror that was the precursor to Wes Craven's 1996 self-aware meta slasher Scream. You got Heather Langenkamp playing herself. You got Robert Englund playing himself.
I'm sure people ask you this all the time. Is there going to be another sequel? And what's more, is Freddy really dead?
Of course he is. Freddy's dead and gone.
And how about your co-star in the original, in Nightmare 1? would you trust him alone with Dylan?
Robert? I don't know.
You know what? Why don't we ask him how he'd feel about it? We've got a big surprise for you, Heather, and for our audience. Let's bring him out. He is the best of the bad. Let's say hello to Robert Englund. Love you, babe. We'll do lunch. Just when you thought it was safe to get back into bed! Give me five!
And other characters from the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, like John Saxon is also playing himself, asked by Bob Shea, who is one of the producers of various Nightmare on Elm Street films, asked her to consider being in a film that Wes is writing. Well, while she is considering it, and while the script is being written, Wes is having all these nightmares, all these earthquakes are happening, and Heather and her son Dylan are getting tortured by the Freddy entity, which is basically a demon taking on the form of Freddy to torture and come out into the real world. And so eventually Heather has to take on the role of Nancy one more time to defeat Freddy once and for all, again, to the next movie. I loved the self-aware attempt. To me, I felt that this was Wes Craven kind of playing around with the idea before he honed it a little bit better in Scream. And as a horror fan, I love the cameos and seeing people play themselves. So Wes Craven was in it, Bob Shea, Robert Englund, of course, Heather Langenkamp played herself. We had Tuesday Night, and I can't pronounce his name, Jesus Garcia, he played Rod Lane, and then also John Saxon was in it. And I like the relationship that John and Nancy had. I mean, you could tell that they are very close friends. In a way, it's almost like it's a father-daughter relationship, which is a very interesting parallel since he played Nancy's father in Nightmare on Elm Street 84 and in Dream Warriors. I really enjoyed that. And also the little kind of Easter eggs that she had the gray streak in her hair and saying the famous line, screw your past. So interesting little Easter eggs there that I really enjoyed. Now, this is a movie that a lot of people said, you need to watch this. This is awesome. It's really, really good. So it was very hyped up, and I went into the movie with very high expectations that for me felt a little bit flat. What were peaks of what could have been good for me were a little destroyed by some of the choices. For instance, the special effects, a lot of them felt kind of plastic and cartoony. Freddy's design, the face almost kind of looked plastic. A lot of special effects at the end during the final fight with Freddy also looked very plastic and cartoony and clashed with a lot of the darker elements of the film. Probably unintentionally, but they still clashed. And so there were also multiple, is this a dream? Is it not a dream? Like those kinds of sequences. And those are common in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. But there were so many in this movie that for me it got old after a while. And some of the acting left a little bit to be desired. One instance in particular, the doctor really annoyed me. Just like, Mrs. Langenkamp, or Ms. Langenkamp, Miss Langenkamp, Ms. Langenkamp, Miss Langenkamp. Like, how many times can you say her name in one conversation? I mean, seriously. And then kind of the weird transition to her being Nancy one last time. It was a little bit strange, even though I did enjoy the whole John Saxon, Heather Langenkamp thing, just playing the father and daughter. I did enjoy that, but the transition for me felt a little bit abrupt.
What the hell is going on, Nancy?
Why are you calling me Nancy, John?
Why are you calling me John? Nancy, pull yourself together before you make yourself and that kid nuts.
John! Robert.
Robert?
Robert Englund. You know, the guy who plays Freddy.
Freddy who?
Freddy Krueger.
Nancy, Freddy's dead. Don't start losing it like your mother did. I love you, sweetheart. Don't forget that.
I love you too, Daddy.
And almost defeating Freddy, Hansel and Gretel style, because that was one of Dylan's favorite stories. And just, I don't know, that just felt kind of, I can't really describe it. Just really, kind of a flat ending. It was a good premise, and I really do appreciate Wes just taking the chance with it, because you could tell he really honed the meta elements in Scream. So to me, this is almost like a test run. For me, it fell flat, but it wasn't horrible. So we got teenagers Nancy, Quentin, Jesse, Chris, and Dean, who are all having the same dream of a man in a tattered red and green sweater who wants to kill them. Who would have thought? The only way to stay alive is to stay awake, and they have to beat him so they can get some sleep. Does this sound a little familiar? It should, because the major flaw that this remake had was that it was trying to borrow way too much from the 84 remake. It's almost a page by page remake. Now, this is a second first watch for me. I hate it a little bit less than when it first came out, mainly because of the dark tone of the film and of Jackie Earle Haley's performance as Freddy. Those two elements are what saved this movie for me. But I think the movie could have been even better if they weren't so worried about shoehorning in elements from the 84 movie, like, you know, the Freddy, like kind of stretching out from the wall, which the effect there wasn't that great. The whole Freddy hand, like coming up for Nancy in bathtub, the iconic line saying, "How's this for a wet dream?" which was said in Dream Master. So borrowing a little bit too much from all the other Nightmare on Elm Street films. The teenagers acting around them were, like I said, they're fine. They're solid. I can't point to any one performance and say it was particularly awesome, because to me, they were all about the same. But Jackie Earle Haley's performance and the dark tone of the film is what has this at a solid number 6 for me. Probably because it reminded me of the original for obvious reasons. So in the fifth movie of this franchise, you see Alice again. And Alice thinks Freddy is defeated for good, and she is eager and anxious to start a new life with her boyfriend Dan. But she's having nightmares again, and she learns that she is pregnant, and she makes a connection in thinking that Freddy is trying to use the dreams of her unborn child to attack and kill her friends and to try and come in this world. So she has to protect her child while defeating Freddy yet again. There were some weird special effects that looked strange and out of place. I wasn't a big fan of the comic book death, and I thought the stop motion effects in the refrigerator and Greta being force fed to death were a little just out of place. The coolest, most rad effect was Dan being turned into that motorcycle demon. Wowee, what a wicked, terrifying, awesome effect. Usher stairs, that famous painting, like where the stairs are going all over the place. That was also a really cool effect. And the movie overall just kind of have a gothic feel to it, like very cool kind of color palette, blue tones. It also just kept me really interested and engaged. The idea of Freddy using an unborn child's dreams to attack others and to potentially be reborn into this world is a really interesting and unique concept. Cool storyline. And it had a lot fewer deaths than Dream Master. So there were only about 3 in the film, I believe, if you're not counting Freddy, which would be 4. And it was a lot more interesting to me than Nightmare on Elm Street 4 Dream Master. I was very engaged with the plot, the storyline, in spite of the special effects that I did not like. There were some really cool ones. And overall, just I had a good time with it. It kept me engaged and interested, and that is why it is smack dab almost in the middle at number 5. So you have Jesse Walsh, who has just played by Mark Patton, who has just moved into the famous Nightmare, what we know is famous, Nightmare on Elm Street home with his family. He is plagued by nightmares and just overly violent impulses, and it turns out Freddy wants to kill the teenagers of Springwood. Who would have thought? And he needs somebody, a host body, to help him carry out his infamous plan. So who does he pick? He picks Jesse. Freddy is slowly starting to take over Jesse, and it is up to Jesse and his girlfriend Lisa, who are racing against the clock to try and figure out what the hell is going on and to try and stop Freddy. So I like this movie, and I liked it since I first seen it. Yes, it goes against the Freddy mythos of him like plaguing dreams, and that's where he stays. He's not really known to try and take over bodies, so it goes against like Freddy's mythos, but I really did like it. And there was a lot of controversy going on behind the scenes, like the filming of that movie. But I like how now it is analyzed and critiqued through a queer lens. And I love how the LGBTQ fans of this franchise have taken this movie and have embraced it and have said just how much they love this film and how much this film means to them. I love it when films and movies are able to do that just so much. It just makes me love this film even more because it is able to do that. So aside from the story, just I loved the special effects, the parakeet exploding. Freddy, you've got the body, I got the brains.
You've got the body. I've got the brain.
Freddy making his way out. Jesse's room, like melting during the night, almost like a Salvador Dali painting. That was pretty cool. Also, Freddy is pretty dark in tone in this movie. And that tone like stays pretty much like throughout the entire movie. This is a pretty dark movie, tonally. And we almost didn't get Robert Englund back as Freddy in this one because New Line Cinema did not want to pay Robert Englund what he was asking for. So he's like, bye. And then 2 weeks into filming with Freddy as a stuntman, Bob Shea was like, oh my goodness, we made a horrible mistake. Like, we've made a really crappy decision. So they fired the stuntman. They hired Robert Englund back. They paid him everything that he wanted, met all his demands, which they should have done in the first place. But when I shuddered to think just how close we were to never getting Robert Englund back as Freddy ever again, oh my gosh, that's kind of terrifying too. And also, this is the only Nightmare film where there is a Scream King, and Jesse is absolutely fabulous as a Scream King. in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And this film is only number 4 because there were a few other films that I liked just a little bit more than this one. Two horror icons facing off. This movie was a very, very long time in the making. Multiple scripts were written, multiple scripts were pushed forward. There were a lot of delays, and then finally in 2003, we had horror icons, Freddy and Jason. Freddy, who is weak and not powerful, and the people of Springwood and Elm Street have forgotten about him, so he needs to make everybody believe in him again. So he brings Freddy back from the dead to do the killing for him and to make people believe that Freddy is back. But Jason gets a little bit too kill happy. He's killing too many of the teenagers on Elm Street and in that town. Freddy doesn't like it. So they have to have a fight. They have to face off against each other. And that's basically the basis of Freddy versus Jason. Freddy, Jason. This film is very pure nostalgia for me. I didn't get to see it in theaters, but I watched it on DVD a little bit after it came out, and I have loved it ever since. It is a very big comfort movie for me. It is a lot of freaking fun, just basically because it's Freddy. It's Jason. Where can you go wrong? You have awesome kills from Jason. You have Freddy's kind of wisecracking antics. You have the big brawls. You had the Nu Metal soundtrack, which is a feature of any early 2000s horror film. This movie is just pure nostalgia for me, and I love it. Well, I won't talk or go into much detail about what Nightmare on Elm Street is about, because in my ranking for number 6, I talked about how Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 was pretty much almost an exact copy of this one. So this one, we have the OG film. We have the film that started off the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So we have the movie that started it all with a great badass final girl in Nancy Thompson. We have a great villain in Freddy Krueger, who for the time, and even now, is so super imaginative. A guy that kills you in your dreams to where you are not safe asleep. And you need to sleep. So you're kind of screwed if you do go to sleep. Great special effects. Tina's death comes to mind. Also, poor Johnny Depp. Poor Johnny Depp, where he sinks into the bed and the blood is... He just gets freaking obliterated. Poor Rod. With so many... the deaths were very few, but they were all people who Nancy were very close to, that they were in her circle, and it was meant to hurt her. And I felt so bad for Nancy, but Nancy prevailed and she kicked ass, and I love her. I never really understood the ending, though, and a lot of people I know don't really understand the ending either. I heard that ending was more of a studio decision. Wes wanted something a little bit different. And this ending is completely different, I believe, than what he wanted, is the story that I remember hearing. But yeah, in spite of the weird ending, I love this movie. And if Nightmare on Elm Street never happened, wouldn't have Freddy Krueger, wouldn't have these badass horror icons, wouldn't have this franchise. We're the Dream Warriors. Don't wanna dream no more. Oh, My favorite film in all of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is Dream Warriors. So we have Kristen Parker, who's having these nightmares and hallucinations, and Freddy has slashed her, and her mother thinks she's slashed her wrists. And her mother thinks she's just doing it to get attention, so she sends her to this asylum where there's other teenagers who are suffering from the same kind of hallucinations and dreams. And one of the doctors there, Nancy Thompson makes a reappearance. She learns that the teenagers are dreaming of Freddy, learns that Freddy is back, and senses something in Kristen that will help possibly defeat Freddy once and for all until the next movie. I love the special effects of this movie. The story in and of itself is great. You have Nancy leading these teenagers, along with this other doctor who, like, it took a while for him to kind of warm up to the idea, but he ends up like helping Nancy and the teenagers out too. So just Nancy and this guy and this group of teenagers just banding together to beat Freddy. Just that is badass. Like seeing Nancy in the mentor role and guiding these teenagers. That's just really, really awesome storyline.
In my dreams, I am the wizard master.
Try something, Kristen. What can you do in your dreams?
A perfect score. The crowd goes wild.
Fucking A dig this.
Kincaid, please. That's very unnerving.
Hey, check out Tara.
In my dreams, I'm beautiful and bad.
And the special effects, besides the first movie, were really, just really memorable and unique. So you had one of the most memorable is Philip and Freddy, like having him be the marionettes and the marionette kill. Oh my God, that one was terrifying. And also another really terrifying moment in the movie is when Nancy gets pulled to Kristen Street and Freddy sees her and is like, yeah. Like, oh, that's terrifying to me. And it always has been.
Oh my God.
And also you had a really badass soundtrack, rock and roll soundtrack. And then Dokken, just bring rock and roll back into horror again. Like, I think that'd be really awesome. Just having every horror movie just have its own cool rock and roll theme song. There were a lot of kills in this movie, but they complemented the storyline. It wasn't just kills for the sake of kills, which I felt that's where Dream Master suffered. You have also one of the most famous, you have like, welcome to primetime, bitch. And sadly, in this one, this is where we lose Nancy. We don't see Nancy anymore. And her death is very, very sad. Yes, I saw Dream Warriors first before I even saw the first one. My mom showed me Dream Warriors. And it has always been a favorite of mine. It'll be number one forever and for all time, and will always be my favorite of all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I've always been very, very drawn to Freddy as almost the physical manifestation of fear. And you personally is having to confront your fears before they consume you, or literally in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, before they kill you. But I had some movies that, some I didn't like, some I thought were fine, and some I really loved. So I really liked watching the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise as a whole. A couple movies I hadn't seen before. Some I had seen, some had been a while since I've seen. So it was really good to sit down, watch them again, and get an overall ranking and figure out an overall ranking and how I felt about them. So what are your rankings? How would you rank the films in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise? I would really like to know in the comments. So are your rankings the same as mine, or are they a little different? Also, thank you for getting through this video, which is one of the longest videos that I have done on this channel. If you want to see more kind of ranking videos or videos like this, also let me know that in the comments below. Oh, class dismissed, everybody. But I will see you next time. Bye.